on the face of the earth right now. 7.53 billion. Now, that's a hard number to even just begin to get your head around, isn't it? I mean, it's just hard to imagine what that even looks like. I remember when I was growing up in third grade, my third grade teacher actually told me that it would take something like 11 days to count to just a million. 11 days. So I looked it up. I wanted to be sure. I Googled it this week, and it actually is, ready for this? 11 days, 13 hours, and 40 minutes. That's just to count to a million. Well, we're not talking about a million, we're talking about 1,000 million. That's what a billion is, 1,000 million. So guess how long it would take to count to a billion? Ready? 31 years, 251 days, 7 hours, and 40 seconds to count to a billion. Again, that's a number so huge that you can hardly get your head wrapped around it. And again, we're not talking about 1 billion people. We're talking about 7.5 billion people. So in order to kind of get our heads around that many people, what do? We group them into different groups of people. We come up with different ways to define smaller groups. And one way is by ethnicity. But did you know the UN says that there are 13,000 to 16,000 different ethnicities on the face of the planet? So that's really not a smaller number that we can really get our heads around. What about countries? There's only 195 different countries, but some of those countries have 1 billion people, like India and China. So that's not helpful getting a smaller number. So maybe we go with a smaller area, a smaller space, like a state. There's 20 million people in the state of New York. And there's 1 million people in the greater capital region. So again, we're still dealing with these really huge numbers. But what if I told you that we can put everybody into 2 groups? Just 2. 7.5 billion into 2 groups. Resurrection people and everyone else. People who live their lives in light of Easter and those who don't. That's what Paul was talking about this morning in the book of Corinthians. He was actually talking to the city of Corinth. And he was dealing with these 2 groups of people. The people who believed that Jesus had been raised from the dead and the people who didn't. In fact, in something he wrote just before what we read this morning, he actually says, if we proclaim Jesus is raised from the dead, how can you say that there's no resurrection? Again, he's dealing with 2 groups of people. But Paul's not the only one who broke everybody down into just 2 groups. One of my favorite authors, C.S. Lewis, has one of my favorite quotes. He says, Jesus is the question that everyone must answer. 7.5 billion people. 1 question, 2 answers, 2 groups of people. But how you answer the Jesus question isn't just a thought experiment. It's not just a mental thing. It changes things. How you answer the Jesus question, how you deal with Easter, it changes how you see your world, it changes how you see yourself, and it changes how you live your life. The resurrection changes how we see our world. When we look out at the world today, there are many things that we see. I'm sure there are things that you see every day that make your heart break, that make your heart hurt. You look out and you see violence happening in the streets. You hear about stories of people being abused for no reason. You look out and you see people suffering, people in pain. People suffering because of poverty. People suffering in hunger. People suffering for something as simple as clean water to drink. And then there are people suffering because there's diseases that we can't cure. And then there's death. There's the pain, the loss, the mourning that comes with death. Things like these, they make you shake your head, sometimes in disgust, and sometimes maybe you're just wondering, you're thinking to yourself, this isn't the way it should be. But if there's no resurrection, if there's no Easter, Paul's words to us should hit home really hard. If we have hope in this life only in Jesus Christ, then we are most of all to be pitied. Why? Because this world of pain, this world of suffering, this world of things that make you shake your head and wonder, this is all there is. This is it. The pain is meaningless. The wars are meaningless. The suffering is meaningless. Death itself is meaningless. Your life is meaningless if this is all there is. But resurrection people look at the world differently. Resurrection people look at the world with hope. Because we know that this world isn't all there is. Resurrection people hear what God said in Isaiah, and we look forward to that world. The world without tears. The world without pain. The world without suffering. The world where there are no more diseases. And yes, the world where death itself is no more. That's why we as resurrection people, we talk about death as a shadow. Because we know we're going to walk right through it. It's nothing. Why? Because Jesus walked right through it. And Jesus showed us on Easter that there is more than just this world. There's more than just this life. There's more to come because there's Easter. But the resurrection doesn't just change how you see your world. It changes how you see yourself as well. R.W. Stott, he was part of the resurrection people, and he said this. He said that the resurrection gives my life meaning and the opportunity to start over no matter what my circumstances. Let me say that again. The resurrection gives my life meaning and the opportunity to start over no matter what my circumstances. Resurrection people believe in comebacks. We believe in second chances. We believe in starting over because we believe in new life. Last week, the world was in awe. I was in awe in my man cave on Sunday afternoon when Tiger Woods made a comeback. It's a great comeback story. We love a comeback story, don't we? Some say that it's the greatest comeback in all of sports history, but last Sunday is nothing compared to today. Last Sunday is nothing compared to the comeback that we see with Jesus. On Friday, everybody thought that Jesus was dead. On Friday, everybody thought that death had won. On Friday, everybody thought that the story was over. But on Sunday, everybody saw that the comeback had happened. New life had happened. The resurrection had happened. And so we as resurrection people, we know that because Jesus comes back, we get comebacks too. We know that our worst days don't define us. We as resurrection people know that our past doesn't define us. Why? Because we get to start over. We get to start over in God's forgiveness. We know that those things that we feel guilty about, the things that we're ashamed of, those things don't define us. They don't define you. So if you're carrying something with you today and you want to start over, if you're carrying something with you today and you want to come back, it's the perfect day for you. You want to be a resurrection person today because today is all about comebacks. It's all about starting over. It's all about new life. And that's what we have in Jesus Christ. That's what we have because of Easter. But if there's no resurrection, what then? Your worst days may define you then. If there's no resurrection, what do you do with your guilt? What do you do with the shame? Where do you turn to hear that you get a do-over? Where do you turn to hear that you get to come back from that? But praise God that we are resurrection people because we get to hear that we get to come back from our worst days. Because of Easter. And Easter changes how we as resurrection people see our lives, how we live our lives as well. On Easter, God didn't leave Jesus in the darkness of the grave. He didn't leave him in the darkness of the tomb. He didn't leave him there. He raised him up. He brought him back. He gave him new life. As resurrection people, we live lives to bring that same hope, that same new life into the lives of the people around us. We live lives to bring that same hope into the community around us. So we go into people's dark places. We go into places where people are hurting. We go to places where people are struggling. We go to places where people are in pain and hurting because we have the hope that they need. We go to the addicts to show them that they have another day coming. They've got a new start coming. We go to those who are struggling with poverty to show them that better days are ahead of them because we have that hope that we can share with them. We go to those who are struggling with fear of their past to let them know that their past doesn't define them. We bring the hope of Easter to them. That's what resurrection people do. That's how we live our lives. That's what it means to live in the light of Easter. It means to bring the hope of Jesus Christ every single day to every person that we meet so that they know that they have the same hope, the same new life, the same comeback available to them. That's who we are. That's what it means to be a resurrection person. It means we get to live in the light of Easter every single day. $7.5 billion people. One question, two answers. But how you answer this question, it changes things. In fact, it changes everything. Because Easter changes everything for us. 7.5 billion people. One question, two answers. What's your answer? Which group are you in? Are you part of the resurrection people? Or something else? It is my hope and my prayer that today you are walking out of here with that same hope that we have. And I hope and pray that you live with that same hope every single day because Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Hallelujah. It's Easter. Let's live like it. Amen.